Okay, this will not be a gameplay video, I don't believe, or perhaps it'll be multiple segments and I'll do gameplay in a different part. But we're gonna look at my decks, at least the decks that I've made and unlocked from playing the color challenges, and just go through those a little bit. Let me check to make sure my mic is working. Good. I need to learn how to use OBS better. I think I pretty much need a second monitor to be able to have that open while, exclusively displaying the... There's probably a way to set it up so that, well, let's go in and look. There's probably a way to have my display capture turned off and just have the MTG Arena capture on there and stuff. But for now, we're gonna leave it like this so you guys get a little glimpse behind the scenes. That's fine. So the decks that I have crafted from scratch, most of these, I think these 5 with the yellow triangles are previous year's starter decks. This one is a deck that I played against and I thought just did really well. So I've kind of fleshed it out a little bit. I need a little bit more of some cards to make it the deck that I want to make it. But yeah, I played against it. I believe I lost. I may have won, but either way, I remember thinking like, wow, that was a pretty solid deck. A lot of disturb cards, spirit tribal, I guess, with a lot of graveyard recursion and stuff like that. And then a lot of these dual-faced cards where they're enchantments and creatures or artifacts and creatures or whatever, so they have a little bit of dual use, which I really like that. Yeah, Brian Comer's another one. So that's a project for another time. So then, large and in charge, keep the peace. Are starter decks, or are the color challenge decks. Squirrel's Relentless, Lorehold Spellcraft, Educated High Rolling, Sacrificial Clerics, Witherbloom Sacrificial, Bloodthirsty Clerics, Shambling Zombies, Minions Vampires, Double Trouble Tricky, Transients Recruits, Vampire Onslaught, Dragon Ramp Wandering, Onslaught Vermin, Onslaught Warlock, Spellcraft Vampires. Those are all from Jumpstart, or Jump In, they call it now. And I always just save the decks because sometimes I find them to be a pretty good basis for another deck. Like the Sacrificial Clerics and Bloodthirsty Clerics became my Soul Brothers Tomb deck, which I'm a fan of. So then, yeah, the decks that I've actually crafted, we've got Chatterfang, Historic Brawl deck. It is not... It is purely made of cards that I had already. Nothing has been purchased or unlocked specifically for this deck, so it's probably not very good. I think I have a decent mix of spells and whatnot. It's pretty basic, Chatterfang says that if you would make a token, instead make that many, make those tokens plus that many 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens. And then you can pay a black, sack X squirrels, target creature gains plus X, minus X until end of turn. I would think the best way to use that would be to try to get through That would be in Commander. I forgot that there's no Commander damage in Brawl. Um, so just wait, swing in, swing wide, wait, whichever they don't block, sacrifice just enough squirrels to pump that one creature enough to get through. The deck I went with was largely focused around zombie tokens because I already had that, and I figure every zombie token I make um, creates squirrels as well. Um, Target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each creature you control. That could be a game ender right there. Squirrel Sanctuary obviously could start a kind of chain of squirrel tokens, especially if you get a sack outfit onto the battlefield. I don't know if I have an outright, like a permanent sack outfit. I should think of adding that. Well, yeah, sack. I mean, if you've got Chatterfang out, then you sack a squirrel, a non-token creature, pay one, bounce it, put it back out, get 2 more squirrels, etc. But yeah, a lot of stuff that basically we're just attacking, making tokens, and then hoping to just overwhelm them. We've got a little bit of graveyard recursion, and we have, there's one other kind of synergy in here. Yeah, the elves. There's a little bit of elf synergy as well. I figured the treasure tokens would be good because it says tokens, so every treasure token also makes me a squirrel. Squirrel Lord. That card is ass. I mean, it's literally a grizzly bear. There's plenty that needs to be taken out. Here's a late game card that could do some damage. This, you get some versatility because of which dungeon you choose to go into. That's still the zombie theme. Ormondal the Corruptor, soft finisher, I guess. Flample, lifelink, sack creature, so we get an outlet for our Squirrel Sovereign, our Squirrel Sanctuary. And then possibly making quite a large army of tokens with Ghoulcaller's Harvest at the end of the game. What else? That's, I think, pretty much it. That's pretty powerful in this deck. I don't run any real dual lands. A little bit more dungeon thing. A little bit of a skeleton thing. Yeah, lots of ways to create tokens and just play off of Chatterfang's ability. But it's not very good. I actually haven't even tested it yet, but I know it's not very good. And then the next one I've actually made is It Wizards, which I think I'm playing as a historic deck. I don't know. We use Festival Crasher, Delver of Secrets, Thermal Alchemist, Prismari Pledge Mage, Umara Mystic, all things that get pumped when we play instants or sorceries, or in the case of Umara Mystic, or Wizards. Same with Umara Wizard itself. We run not very many lands, as you can see. We've got, what is this, 17, 18, 19 lands. I've got the 2 dual-faced here, and the 2 dual-faced here. So I might be playing it a little close, but, you know, total that's 23 lands in a deck that runs pretty low to the ground anyway, and in a deck that you really need to be drawing gas every turn in order to win. You can't be getting, you can't run the risk of drawing 3 lands in a row late in the game when all you need is 1 Burn Bright or 1 Shock even to tip the tides and win the game. Because Festival Crasher, your opponent has to answer that. I mean, shit, they have to answer Delver of Secrets. It's, one of the most powerful creatures ever printed, in my opinion. Yeah, and then we have another version of that deck. I forget what format that's in. I think this Is It Wizards is legal in Historic, and maybe Alchemy. Blue-Red Delver is legal in Standard right now, and is essentially the same deck. We run a lot more creatures. Balmor Battlemage Captain, Najal the Storm Runner, Storm Skrillex, just to have a little bit more long game potential. The goal is really getting a Twinferno and having, 2, 3, 4 creatures out and being able to pick the one that, hopefully you'll play. Consider or Lightning Strike. I should probably run 2 more of those. I'd probably take out Gitu Amplifier and add 2 more Lightning Strike. But even just to play with fire into a Twinferno, you've got 2 spells. As long as you have 2 or 3 creatures out, that can be several activations of your Thornwell Alchemist. It's nothing complicated, but it does the job. I only have one. Do I have more of those? I do have another one. I'm going to add that. I'm going to add a Lightning Strike, and I'm going to take out the Gitu Amplifiers right now. At least there's another answer to a Planeswalker here. Done. Then my standard deck. Oh, let's come back to this. Rakdos Constructs. Let's come back to that because it's probably my most complicated deck. Soul Brothers Tomb was a deck that I made because of. I'll actually be back in 30 seconds. Sorry about that. Was a deck I made out of several of my jump-in, jump-start decks, and Soul Brothers because they're male versions of Soul Sisters, essentially, in Impassioned Orator, and Core Celebrant. All that's a lot later, so I think Cleric of Life's Bond, because we're mainly running only clerics, I believe. We got a couple zombies there. Those could go for something else. It needs some tweaking. I need some more interaction, some more removal and stuff like that. Let's see if I've got. Nope. And I don't have very many wild cards right now. So I'm trying to not. I spent $20 on gems. That's the only purchase I've made in this game so far at all. And I haven't spent any of them yet. I have all the gold and gems that I have outside of that have just been from playing and grinding, and I've played, you saw how many Jumpstart decks I've had, so I've played a ton of Jumpstart to get cards. That was before I learned about the being told to use the sealed and draft formats as a more economic way of spending your coins and your gems. But I'm not great at it. I've been out of Magic for a long time. I've played since the late 90s, um, but I've been out of it for the last 5 years maybe. And even in the years before that, I played Standard for a little while, MILGS, and but it's mostly been Commander and kitchen table Magic with friends, where everything's pretty low powered. So I'm not in tune with the meta yet of any of the formats that I've been playing lately, and so um, it definitely needs more stuff in it. But basically, the goal is, do I have another one of him? No, I need another one of him. Basically, the goal is venturing into the dungeon. Because where are our dungeon? We've got Nadar. That's only one, two. I thought I had more ways to venture into the dungeon. Huh. Yeah, we need to add more ways to venture into the dungeon. Because the goal is basically getting Acererak, the Archlich Archlich out, and getting to the Tomb of Annihilation as fast as possible, and having enough of these creatures. We don't really run artifacts, so we only have to we go um, Trapped Entry, Oubliette, and then straight to Cradle of the Death God. Um, you can pick the other path if you need, but I'd rather get the 4/4 out as fast as possible. It just has to be answered, and the fact that he bounces back to your hand plays into the life gain. Is he a cleric? No, he's not. So, yeah, it needs some tweaking for sure, but it does pretty well. Another thing I would like to have is a sack outlet. Um, I thought I had a way to give I thought I had a board wipe in here. But mainly you hear something on watch to deal with our opponent's attacking creatures early game. Hopefully we're drawing into some of our one-off removal spells later in the game. We really only have Hero's Downfall and Closing Statement to deal with Planeswalkers. One card I could add is that I just got is Elspeth. I need to add something like that. Wandering Emperor might be okay. Flash, as long as the Wandering Emperor entered the battlefield this turn, you may activate her loyalty abilities anytime you can cast an instant. Put a 1/1 counter on up to one target creature. It gains first strike. Create a 2/2 white samurai creature token. Exile target tapped creature. You gain 2 life. Mainly as things that they just have. There she is, Elspeth Replended. Choose one target creature, put a 1/1 counter on it, and a counter from among Flying, First Strike, Lifelink, or Vigilance. Look at the top 7 cards for your library. Put a permanent with mana value 3 or less from among them onto the battlefield with a shield counter on it, which essentially gives it an extra life. and create 5/3/3 White Angels. Something like that I think would be good to add. This would be good. Well, could be good. Um, this is just such late game. Let's search. I got my colors up. Let's search dungeon. Because I used to run Cloister Gargoyle. And I had some other one-offs. Yuan-Ti Fangblade might be okay. I used to run 50 Feet of Rope. I used to run Dungeon Map. But really, I just need more copies of him because that's the kind of the key. That's the tomb in the Soul Brothers tomb. And he also funnels into the lifelink synergies. So I like this deck. It's not great, but I like it. What did I change? I don't know what I changed. I'm just going to discard them. Then we have... I just got unlocked from the color challenges. I just unlocked On the Hunt and Angelic Accountants, both of which I had enough cards to double up on key cards. So this is basically Werewolf Tribal, but I was able to cull some of the weaker cards out of it and double up on some of the key ones. Basically you're trying to get your wolves out early and keep control of the day-night cycle to benefit the fact you're just trying to overwhelm them with creatures. Unnatural Moonrise is nice because it affects the day-night and you can give things trample, and you have fairly high power creatures overall. We have a little bit of creature removal there. We have a little bit of ramp. A little bit more ramp here. If we can get him flipped, we can do some combat trickery, swing in with several of our creatures, and then activate his ability to hopefully overwhelm them. She's good either to immediately make 2/2 wolves, 2/2 wolves in this deck on turn 4 is good because you probably have Paxong Pup, Cassig Naturalist if it's flipped, things like that. But yeah, it's pretty simple. This is nice because if you have it out, then on turn 5 you can play something fairly small and then pump a creature just to be a little more aggressive. Haste is such an overlooked effect. People get so into that lockstep of like, well, they can't attack the turn they play it, and then having something where you can is really nice. Same with this card. And I would like... Do I have more of these? I do have more of those. Lunar Frenzy. Let's take out a Weaver of Blossoms, maybe? And another Lunar Frenzy, because that can be a finisher late game. And you've got a decent board state. One Field of Ruin, not great, but it's there. Get rid of somebody's, dual land early if you draw it early is nice, because I don't really need dual lands. Nothing's that color intensive that I won't be able to draw. I should add, I don't know if Evolving Wilds is available in this format. If it is, it is. I should probably run Evolving Wilds. I could run Crystal Grotto. That might help, filter through to get the things that you really need. But as it is, it does okay. This one we will save. And then the other one I just got was Angelic Accountants, and again I had enough cards to double up on some of the key cards, and you're basically just playing. I need more of her because if you can get this out early, then all your other angels enter with a counter, and we have a lot of other counters matter spells. That's where I got the Elspeth. Metropolis Angel is nice later game. And then, where is Borrowed Time is kind of my big removal. The elite, it can target permanents, it can target enchantments, artifacts. And so being able to Elspeth into this in a key moment, and then you have out, Metropolis Angel. I usually go with the Vigilance counter from her +1 because having 3/3/4/4 and then increasingly stronger flyers as the game goes on, and you get more and more counters on everything, makes it really hard for a creature-based deck to deal with you, and you have enough ways to deal with Planeswalkers with the Borrowed Time. It would be nice if this also targeted Planeswalkers. This can be quite a boon later in the game, although everything I have is basically already an angel, so it being, it doesn't help that much, I guess. But yeah, I had some good matches with this earlier today. And that's it for the... Oh, and then blue-black spells. This was another one from a Jumpstart deck. No, this was from my draft deck. I did a draft. I got absolutely obliterated. I went 1-3. But I liked her. Whenever you cast an instant sorcery, each opponent loses 1 life. You may cast Rona Shieldred's Faithful from your graveyard by discarding 2 cards in addition to paying its other costs. And we just have a lot of instants and sorceries to make our opponent discard, let us, or not make our opponent discard, sorry. Bounce stuff, dig through our deck, remove creatures, and so if we get a Delver early, then we can control them with our cut downs and our Infernal Grasps, Vengeful Strangler, things like that. Which this is, I feel like, an overlooked card. It's easy to just keep swinging in with it. It can't block, and then as soon as it dies, you put this on something that they really need and make them discard. If you can make them discard more than 1 permanent with this, I feel like that's just such good virtual card advantage. And we have plenty of ways to draw cards with Academy Wall, Thirst for Discovery, getting our creatures back with this, and then threw in Hullbreaker Horror because it's just a good card. And we have so many spells that we can use its effects more than once a turn, past turn 7. Need more Rona, because getting her out on turn 4 is kind of the linchpin of the deck. But, yeah, I really like that one. And then, so those are all the decks I've made from jump-ins and that I've crafted from scratch with like Izzet Wizards or Blue Red Delver. Both of those cards I run. I have Izzet Wizards is my budget modern deck in paper. It uses Adeliz, the Cinderwind, tons of dig spells, Wizard's Lightning, and then the miracle cards. I run 3 of the. It's like deal 5 damage, and then I run Temporal Mastery. Take another turn after this one. And that. So that's where I like playing. Is it aggro, spell aggro decks? But then this, Rakdos Constructs, I've called it, is a deck that I use MTG Assistant. You can see up here in the corner. Deck Advisor will tell you what. Highly recommend downloading it. Be able to look at view craftable decks is great. I guess I haven't looked into paying to get rid of the ads. That can be kind of annoying, but Deck Advisor is where I learned of that Rakdos deck. This will show you decks that have solid win rates that are, obviously not a huge amount of the meta, but for pretty much every format, and knowing how many wild cards short you are made it very easy to. I saw this deck listed on there, and I needed, maybe 1 or 2 of every style of wild card to run it. And so the deck is basically built around Soakins and Smelter. The beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay 1 and sack an artifact. If you do, create a 3/1 red construct artifact creature token with haste. And then Oni Cult Anvil, whenever 1 or more artifacts you control leave the battlefield, create a 1/1 colorless construct. Triggers only once each turn. Tap, sack an artifact, deals 1 damage to each opponent, you gain 1 life. So it's pretty easy to start snowballing playing cards like Experimental Synthesizer, just for the fact that it's an artifact, and once you sack it, it gives you some card advantage. You can use it to create the Samurai, although I almost never do. Getting the blood tokens, having a card like this at instant speed, being able to deal 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker is nice. And we generally have enough artifacts that can be sacked in the form of blood tokens, our 1/1s, and then the other 3 cards that are important to the deck. Oh, Bloodtithe Harvester's in there. You don't make that many blood tokens, so it's unlikely he's gonna be his tap ability is gonna be a huge impact in the game, but it's there, and he makes you a blood token, and a 3/2 for 2 mana is just solid, in a deck that wants to be aggressive. Same with Sanguine Statuette. Once you've got your engine out of Oni Cult Anvil, then you can play this, create the blood token, sack the blood token to Oni Cult Anvil, which creates your 1/1 colorless artifact, and that just keeps the thing rolling. But then we also run 2 of Ob Nixilis the Adversary. So Casualty X. The copy isn't legendary and has starting loyalty X. So you may sacrifice a creature with power X when you do copy this spell. Easy to sack one of our 3/1 artifact creatures. And then you can use 1 of the copies to immediately use his -2 and create a devil. And then with the other copy, use his +1. Each opponent loses 2 life unless they discard a card. I also gain 2 life. And then if they can't answer him, or they can only answer 1 of him, you can move toward his -7, which can either get you enough cards to win the match if you're ahead but kind of stalemating, or make your opponent draw 7 and lose 7 life. That's pretty good. Then Fable of the Mirror Breaker, I love the modal nature of this, where you can cast it at any, or can you? Oh no, so yeah, you do have to cast it at its first level, but it gets you treasure token, and or creates a 2/2, and that gets you treasure tokens. Discard some cards, draw that many cards, and then once it's flipped, create a token that's a copy of another target non-legendary creature you control, except it has haste. Sack at the beginning of its next substep. Create another 3/1. Copy Bloodtithe Harvester to get another token. Copy your Silkenson Smelter to keep that chain of 3/1s going. And it's something they kind of have to answer. And then Braid's Arisen Nightmare, since we have artifacts to sack and creatures that once they've been played don't really matter to us anymore, like Voldaren Epicure. Your opponent must sack the same type of permanent, and if they don't, they lose 2 life and I draw a card. So it's something your opponent's going to want to get off the table fast, which helps protect your Anvil Smelter combo, if you want to call it that. Some games, it's incredibly straightforward. You get your Sulkin Smelter, you get your Oni Cult Anvil out, and you just steamroll them. It's just, you're putting too much on the table for them to even really deal with. Some games, it is really tricky to go back and forth between, it's a game of inches. Which one of these do I sack? Which one of these do I swing? Do I swing? Do I wait? Do I, it can be kind of a tricky deck to pilot. But with the right opening hand, or mulliganing correctly, you can get going pretty fast, and it quickly becomes ridiculous how many 3/1 artifacts with haste that you have, which then fuel the rest of your deck. Braids, Fable. Text. Hold on one sec here. I just have to compose my text. I can't just be like, yeah, haha. I'm gonna have to go here in a minute. But, so that's this deck, Rakdos Constructs. And if you look it up on MTG Goldfish, I want to say it's something like $200 to $300 on MTGO, and it is like over $100 in paper. It's by far my most expensive deck that I have if I were to try to make it on paper in Arena. Yeah, well, since I got that text, I guess that's a little deck overview video. And then we'll have some gameplay coming up next. All right.